Hello and welcome to the What's New in Avaya Aura Application Enablement Services 7.0. My name's Mark Morley from Avaya Learning. So the intended audience here, content in this course is intended for audiences interested in the new features and functionality introduced into Application Enablement Services Release 7.0. Quite a short presentation today. We're timetabled for 1 hour. Okay, so here's the objectives. We'll look at the key features and functionality, how AES is deployed in Aura 7, and describe the new features and functionality in AES 7. So there's an agenda. We'll do an overview, a bit of a recap on the previous session, 2007, which is what's new in Avaya Aura 7. We'll look at deployment first, how to deploy the AES, finally finishing up with features and functionality. Okay, so as explained on the other sessions, here are the courses, 2007 through 2011 is the all of the what's new. There are 5 courses with 4 tests. So if you'd like to test your understanding of today's session, you can go in Avaya Learning and search for the 2008 T, and you can take an online test. It's not a certification test. It's just for you to check your understanding. So while we are thinking about certifications, rolling out later this year, we have solution-based curriculum and certifications. There's going to be 2 for the Avaya Aura Core is referred to as team engagement. So watch out for that new term. Anything about team engagement is really talking about system manager, session manager, CM, presence, etc. It's the core products. So in the ACIS implementation suite, there's going to be 3 classroom courses: 7.1.20, 7.1.30, 7.1.40, which is integration basics. We then have integrating enterprise team engagement core, and finally there's the advanced solution, integrating advanced solution. There's 2 online tests followed by a proctored exam. So you go to Pearson VUE to take that proctored exam. Then moving up, we have the ACSS, which will be again 3 courses, classroom-led courses. So this is looking at troubleshooting the team engagement solution. We have a troubleshooting methodology class, followed by troubleshooting the core, followed by troubleshooting advanced. 2 online tests and another proctored exam. So the implementations number range is 71, and you can see the support range is 72, and that applies to the tests and the exams. Okay, so look out for those. There'll be announcements about that separately. Right, what do we hear? We want what's new in AES 7. So we'll do a recap of what we learned on what's new in Aura 7. And if you haven't taken that class, I advise you to. There's a recorded session 2007W, it will be, on Avaya Learning. So we saw that we could deploy applications in one of two models. There's the appliance model, the Avaya provided server, or we can carry on and use the virtualized environment model, VE model, which has been around since the release 6 time frame. Hardware we can use a common server 1 or common server 2, and we learned that the appliance virtualization platform is a VMware based hypervisor replacing system platform. So we don't use the system platform Zen hypervisor anymore. In release 7 it's all VMware. We also learned about the solution deployment manager, which comes in 2 formats. There's a client, Windows-based client you can install on your PC to deploy applications, or you can use the SDM within System Manager. We also learned that Aura 7 will introduce an out-of-band management option. So if we want to isolate our management traffic, we can do so. And we looked at the upgrade and migration paths to Aura 7. So for the AES, there are 3 offers. You can have Avaya provided AVP, the customer provided VMware environment, or there is also a software only option for AES running on Linux. Okay, so this is a block schematic. We can see the AES in the middle here and CM next to it. So what is AES? It's a software platform that leverages the capability of CM and provides an enhanced set of APIs and protocols and web services for CTI applications. AES enables call center applications like Agent Desktop to control a phone. It's used to integrate Microsoft Link and IBM Same Time, as well as third-party call recording applications. So it typically uses DMCC and TSAPI service to translate CSTA TR87 messages from applications into ASAI Q931 to talk to CM. So it's acting as a big translator here from SIP CTI as carried, we call that TR87 when it's transported by SIP, into the ASAI H323 messaging for CM to understand. So that's just a basic block schematic of AES. Moving on and having a look at deployments, so we can deploy on AVP or VE environment. A suggested order would be that if we're going to be putting it on an AVP, we would need to have a utility services VM deployed first on that AVP to give us a services port interface. It would make sense to have System Manager deployed next, and so that we can use the SDM within System Manager to deploy all these other applications. Okay, appliance model. So needs to run on a common server 1 or 2. You need to have AVP software, which comes on a DVD, utility server or utility services OVA, system manager, CM, application enablement service OVA. The way we give the AVP its IP address is using an AVP installation file generator tool to create us a kickstart.cfg file, which is the config of the AVP. We put that on a USB thumb drive when we do the installation of the AVP. We also need authentication and licenses for AES, and we need to think about our customer network IP address information and whether we're using separate out-of-band management or not. So in a customer provided environment, you need to use ESXi 505155, part included in a vCenter, and the same application OVA files that we've just been talking about, so all the rest is the same. Okay, so you deploy the OVAs, you configure the application and verify the installation. So we're just looking here at how we would do it in the VE environment, where we're in a vCenter or using a vSphere client here. We've selected whereabouts we want it in our hierarchy of VMs and templates, and then having selected that folder, you come to the top and say File, Deploy, OVF Template. You browse for the software, in this case AES. You can see it's an AES big file name ending in .ova, and say Next. Read the summary of what the template will take up size-wise. Accept the end user license agreement and say Next. Can then name the AES, or if you leave it as default, it will just be called Application Enablement Services, and then you have to select one of the profiles or flexi footprints. So this is whether we want small, medium or large. So there's actually 3 profiles. Profile 1 at the top here needs 1 CPU, 2 gig of memory. You can read it as good as me. Profile 2, Profile 4, and then that equates to Profile 1 here. We can see the maximum number of user agents, maximum number of busy hour call completions. So this is if we're in what we call third-party call control as opposed to first-party call control. One of the announcements in this release was we've increased the number of DMCC connections to 8,000, so that's in first party. In third party call control, we're looking at 5,000. So this is where something like an agent desktop third party controls a hard phone on CM. And the maximum number of messages per second is over on the right here. Okay, so once we've selected our profile, we then have to decide the host or cluster that we're storing the VM on, and select a resource pool. So we're deciding where we're storing the virtual machine, and in this case we've selected thick provisioning. decide on our network connections in terms of VLAN. So here in this customer provided environment, they've set up a VLAN D or a port group D520. That only means something to the administrator that set it up. And because we're not using separate out-of-band management, we're selecting that VLAN for all three networks: public, private, out-of-band management. We fill in the properties. So application host name, etc. Say next. And we get a summary at the end. Say finish, and you've got the option of powering up the machine after the deployment is finished, or you can manually do that later. And then send it off, deploy. And then you can, if you didn't take the option of powering it up, you right mouse click on the virtual machine up here. Sorry, right mouse click on there, power on. So that's how to deploy the AES in the VE environment. Okay, so if you just stand by, I'll give you a live demonstration of that. So I'm just going to set that up for you. Okay, carrying on. So you should be able to see my desktop. I'm remotely connected to one of my lab PCs, and I've opened up vSphere client to our vCenter, and I'm just about to show deployment of AES. So I've selected VMs and templates at the top, and under UK Core 1 I've got a development area, Lab 7, and that's where I'd like this virtual machine to be placed. So having selected that folder, I say File, Deploy OVF Template. I need to browse on my desktop is where the OVA is located. So there's the AES OVA software. Summary of the template details. Accept the end user license agreement and say next. So I'm going to give it a more meaningful name to me, UK Core 1 Aura 7 AES number 7 for pod 7. That means something to me. Okay, so that's the virtual machine name. I say next. Here's where I'm selecting my profile, so I'll just do a small profile 1. And now I'm selecting the host or the cluster on which I want to store the virtual machine. So I'm going to select FA1 cluster, which is a cluster of ESXi servers. Here they all are, and I have the choice of putting it on any of these machines, so I'm just going to use the one at the bottom here. I'll go for thick provisioning. Okay, and here I need to select my public, private and out-of-band management. In my case, my administrator's given me a VLAN 77 for this lab, so I'm going to set all of those. Remember, in the VE environment there is no service port, so we would gain access to the console by right mouse clicking on the virtual machine once it's deployed and saying open console. And I'm not using separate out-of-band management, so I'll also say DV port group 77. So that's just an assigned VLAN number that my administrator has documented. There's nothing significant in that value. Okay, so how do we supply the host name? It wants it to be a Linux host name or fully qualified domain name. So uk-c1-aes7.lab.train.avaya.com. I'm going to put it in as an FQDN. I'm not going to have any DNS search path. Europe, London, point to an NTP server. Default gateway for this network. Okay. And a DNS server. Where our FQDN can be resolved. Okay, so now we can see we have public IP address, subnet mask, and private IP address. Okay, so this depends on whether you're setting up the AES in single NIC or dual NIC configuration. So in a single NIC configuration, you use one network interface. That is, the AE services server uses one NIC for client switch and media connectivity. The AE services server, communication manager and the client application computer must reside on a private LAN, a virtual LAN or a WAN. In a single NIC configuration, you must configure the IP interface for the AE services server to be accessible over the public internet for the registration of IP endpoints. And we recommend a single NIC configuration connectivity for connectivity to most communication manager media servers. So you can see more information about this. See supported servers for more information about deployments and upgrades to AE Services 7. Okay, so in a single NIC configuration, CM and the clients are communicating over the same NIC. So in that case, we would only fill in public IP address. In a dual NIC configuration, you use two network interfaces and you separate it, in separate network segments. One of the NICs is used for connectivity to CM and the other network is used for client and media connectivity. So the NICs must be on separate networks or network segments, and in dual NIC configuration the client network is referred to as the production or public network and the CM segment is referred to as a private network. So in that situation, you would be filling in public and private. And then we've had that before Aura 7, that capability. And now we can also have separate out-of-band management. So the purpose of introducing the out-of-band management interface is to separate the management traffic from any other traffic, including the other traffic on the private LAN. Thus we could have the client apps connecting to the public network, ETH0, the signaling traffic to CM, CLANs and media servers on the private network, ETH1, and finally the operation and maintenance management console on its own private network, accessible via ETH2. So you've got combinations here where you could just have single NIC working with no out-of-band management, single NIC working with out-of-band management, dual NIC working without out-of-band, or dual NIC working with out-of-band management. So I'm just going to use single NIC, so I'm going to allocate an IP address 135.60.232.253, subnet mask 255.255.255.128. Okay, so I'm leaving private IP address, I'm leaving out-of-band management blank, and I'm going to say next. And there it is. As a summary, I can choose to power up after deployment, which I'll do, and say finish. So now that goes off a few minutes to deploy the VM, and then it will power it up afterwards. I don't think it's worth us sitting watching that. Okay, so we're just going to see a new machine appear under here. Actually, I'll just pause. Okay, so I just pause the recording for a minute or so there. So you see we're getting to the end of the deployment now. Okay, and there we can see my new machine deployed, and if I right mouse click here, open console, we might be able to see it powering up. There you go, we see the progress. That's the perfectly normal progress of AES powering up. Red Hat Linux has just appeared, 6.5. Okay. Okay, so that was a demo of that. I'm now going to move on and look at some of the new services, feature and functionality that's been introduced. Right, so enhanced geographic redundant HA. So in the past we had a system platform providing fast reboot HA, or special for AE services we had a machine preserving HA function. That's gone now, so instead of that we've enhanced the geographic redundancy HA capability to provide similar level of redundancy. So the way we have to use application or AES geographic redundancy in Aura 7. I'm told that if we can still use AES 6.3.3. So if machine preserving HA is essential to customers, then in the Aura 7 time frame, the Aura 7 core will work with AES 6.3.3. Okay, but if we're upgrading the AES to 7, we're going to need to switch to geographic redundant HA. So with GR HA, 2 servers, they can be co-located or spread across the network. You don't need a dedicated link between the 2 servers as you did with Fast Reboot HA. So sharing of data between the 2 servers is over the network. GRHA supports a services servers deployed only on a VMware environment. So that's either AVP or VE model. What we're talking about there, not software only. So customers need to use a VMware environment for GRHA. Carrying on. So database or critical system files, changes to the database or critical system files are replicated to the far end every minute, and changes to the database or critical system files made by the OAM web pages is replicated on demand. For DMCC, the session states, changes are replicated to the far end server as soon as the session has been established or terminated. With monitor states, as soon as the monitor has been started, changed or stopped, and in the case of registration states, again, changes are replicated to the far end as soon as registration or unregistration has been complete. So we can now detect unreachable SIP endpoints. So this is showing the problem that we had up until now. Basically, we couldn't, the SIP endpoints, when they become unreachable, CM was unaware of them. We'll assume CC Elite logged in. Sorry, it would assume that the agent is still logged in. CMS IQ will continue to show the agent is logged in, and the agent selection and reports are compromised. So not desirable. We've fixed that in AES 7. Applications will be notified when an endpoint is out of service. Applications will look at services state of the endpoint to determine if logged in user can accept calls. Logout agent, if not available, the agent or user logged into the endpoint can accept calls. Okay, and now we've just got some more infrastructure updates. So under the DMCC support, we DMCC.NET SDK supports .NET Framework 4.5.2. DMCC Service and Java SDK supports OpenJDK 1.8. Red Hat Linux 6.5 is now supported for AES. We increased the number of DMCC registrations, as mentioned before, and we increased number of domain controller associations. So increase the maximum number of domain controller associations per station will enable better scaling, particularly for call center as a service and other large call center elite opportunities. So CM7 increases the maximum domain controller associations from 4 to 8. Available to previous releases of AES servers that are connected to CM7, so that's also applicable to 6.3.3. We support the 9601 endpoint SIP only, the CVLAN or TSAPI client SDKs supported on Red Hat Linux 6.5 and OpenSSL 1.1 version and higher strength ciphers. So, okay, where can you get more information? Support.avaya.com. We're now post GA, so you'll be able to get access to those documents. Also, a lot of good collateral on the sales portal. There's the recorded tech transfers that have taken place. And that concludes today's session. So we looked at the key features and functionality of Aura 7, describe how to deploy AES 7, and describe the new features and functionality introduced on the Avaya AES 7. Okay, thank you for listening, and that concludes the session. Goodbye.